Hi, this is Joe Bolen, and today we're going to talk about data types. In the last lesson, we talked about declaring a variable and the process of giving a variable name to our different variables that we might use in a program. But we also need to declare the data type that we're going to be using when we declare our variable. Think of declaring a data type as if you were on a trip and you were going to go to a hotel or motel, where you would call up and make a reservation for the number of beds you might need or the number of rooms you might need. For example, a family might need to have one large king bed and maybe a small crib for a child. Well, in the same way, we want to reserve in computer's memory things for very large numeric values and content, and we also want to have smaller things reserved for our shorter kinds of numbers that we might have or smaller content. So we're going to declare variable types. So let's take a look at variable types. Now there are 15 primary variable types in Visual Basic. We're going to look at only some of those on that, and I'll give you a reference to look at where you can find that at Microsoft to learn more about variable types. So let's take a look at my chart that I have. I have up a chart about the data types, and all data types basically start with the object type. This is sort of like a big blob of anything. And in the last lesson where I had not used the data type in declaring my variable, it was declared basically as just an object. And unfortunately, that meant that the system had to figure out when it was running what size in memory did it need to declare to itself to finish out processing. And actually it was a very intensive part of the computer's activity just to figure out what I was referring to. Well, we're going to tell the computer what we're going to be needing, and these are the basic types. We have whole numbers or integer values, and then we have also real or fractional numbers with decimal points, and then there's some other types that we'll take a look at as well. And I've highlighted in bold those that we use the most when we're doing programming, but we should be aware of all the others that are out there so we can take advantage of their particular ability to define the variables we would be using in our computer program. Now let's take a look at whole numbers. We have the biggest type is called a long or int64. And we use this only when we need to have very, very big whole numbers being stored in the computer. And it's not used that often. However, we do use the integer data type or the int32, and there's where we hold most of our values for whole numbers when we're processing integer values. There is also one called the short or int16 for smaller magnitudes of whole numbers. So basically in the whole number integer area we use the integer data type or int32. Now the reason I'm using integer or int32 is integer is Visual Basic's declaration of a type. int32 is the .NET Framework's designation of the same thing. So either one of these are the same in terms of how the computer is allocating memory in the computer space. Now, if we're working with fractional numbers, there are other values we use, the decimal data type, and normally the decimal data type is used for monetary kinds of functions. The important thing when we're working with monetary values is we want to keep precision high so we don't lose the value of our money. Also, we have the double data type, which is used a lot for calculations where we have fractions or decimal points as part of our process, and this can hold a very large amount of precision for floating point decimal points. There's a smaller one sometimes used called the single as well. on that. So when you need to worry about working with fractions, you'll probably be using the double data type. And if you're working with money, you'll be using the decimal data type. Some other ones that are a little bit unique in their designation is the Boolean true-false value. It defaults to false when we declare it. This is basically it's either it's going to be true or it's false, and we can use it to test against different controls that we might have or logic that we might have in our program. Then there's also the date or date time data type, and this is a special kind of value where we hold actually a number in this data type, but we reference it with different types of approaches. Here we see the pound sign, month, slash, then the day, then a slash, then the year, then the pound sign to initialize a numeric value held within this a date being declared. So when we want to work with times and dates, we use the date or date time data type. Sometimes we want to reference only a character, and for example, an A is a character that we have, and we could put it into a variable that we declared by making it a char data type. We've already seen a string, and a string is a little bit different from our primitive data types because it's a reference type. We'll talk more about that later on, but it is one of the things we would be doing when we have a sentence type structure of something we want to store or present in our program. Then there is another one called a user-defined type, which we actually take the other types and build it up as one big type or structure for our data value. So when we look at declaring data types, we're looking at everything being an object initially. They then can be as whole numbers or fractional numbers or one of the other miscellaneous data types that we might have. And we need to declare them so we make reservation in the computer as to exactly how much space in memory we need to allocate for our program. Well, let's get into our program and learn a little bit about doing that process. So I'm going to do a new project, and I'm going to make a console type again, and we're going to call this the data type demo. I'll hit OK, and I'm going to magnify this so it's bigger and go full screen. Okay, we have once again our simple console application, and we'll put in our keywords console write line and console read key to do our basic console operation. Now, in the last lesson, we talked about declaring a variable, and I just said dim, and then I gave a variable name. This time we're going to be a little bit more specific. So in this case, let's say I want to deal with a whole number. So I'm going to say first number, dim first number, but I'm going to use the as, and I'm going to say integer. Okay, and then I'll dim second number as integer. So I've declared a specific data type for these. Now, one of the things we can do is, since these are both integer, I could write it a different way. I could say dim, I'm going to give a different one, third number, fourth number as integer. This is a shortcut. Personally, I do not like this style. I would like to keep individual lines for what I'm defining. So with those being defined, we can then initialize them with a value. So first number, I'm going to assign to it 10. Second number, I'm going to assign to it 50. Spell it right first. And then I'm going to take the product of those two together. So I'm going to take first number plus second number. And so what will be happening is I've declared an integer type, and you'll see when I hold my cursor on the word integer, it says it represents a 32-bit signed integer on that. And as I come over to first number, it knows now that it is an integer type. And when I put the value into first number will point to a value 10 in memory's location, and the second number will point to 50 in memory's location. We're going to then retrieve those values, first number and second number. We're going to add them together, and then the sum will be outputted to our screen. So let's do a start debug. And in fact, we'll see that 10 plus 50 equals 60. Now, if I had put 50.56, which is a fractional number here, we'll see something happen in this. This would normally give us 60.56 if we were working with fractional numbers instead of integers. But in this case, we'll see a little bit different kind of results. So let me run this. And here we see 61. What has happened is this has been rounded off to a whole number as it processes through. And so instead of it being 10 plus 50.56, it's actually 10 plus 51 on that. Now let's change the data type to a fractional data type, and we'll go to make it now a double. I'll make the other one as double as well. Now when I run it, I should get, in fact, 60.56 when I process this, because this is now a fractional variable to hold a fractional value coming into it. So let's run this. And we do, in fact, get our fractional value. Now, if I have a variable that I want to output to instead of doing the process internally, I can do it this way. Dem another one like result. Okay, now we can then take result number, assign to it our product, first number plus second number. And then instead of doing it within the right line operation, we'll just retrieve back out of memory our result number. So this time we have three variables declared. We're taking the first two, we've assigned them hard values, and then we're processing that with doing a summation of those two numbers to give us a result number. That result number then is being read from memory and retrieved and written to the screen. And there's the process. Now, if we were working with money, we would want to have something more like a decimal type. And I'm going to do decimal here as well. Spelled up here, and I'll also do decimal here. Okay, so let's say I get 50.25 dollars per hour, and I worked for 40 hours on that, and I'm going to take the first number times the second number, multiply them together, and get my result. So we're looking now at processing a monetary type of value with the decimal. And we see that I get $2,010 as our value on that. So when we want to be very precise, especially with monetary, we use the decimal. Otherwise, we use the double for fractional numbers. Now, if we're working with a string, before I just did a dim and then I said a value and then gave it a hard value, but let's do a dim, and I'm going to just call it for now a string. And since I used the a in front of it, it's not a reserved word, and I'm going to say as string. And then I'm going to assign to the string a string. I'm going to assign to it the literal hello world. And then I'm going to output that to my console, a string. And there it is. And once again, if I had a second string, and now I'm going to call this first string. Whoops, my case got first string as string and dim second string as string. Now I'm going to say a first string is going to be assigned hello world. Second string is going to be assigned have a great day. And then I'm going to output first string, and instead of adding, we use the concatenation character of the ampersand and the second string. So when I run this, I'll have hello world, then I'm going to join together the second string, which is have a great day, and I had a space in front of have so it would look right. Let's run this one. Hello world, have a great day. So you can see that when we start to declare things, we want to use the data type, and we use the dim to declare our variable name that we're using. Then we say as, and then we give it the data type that we're going to be using. It could be decimal, it could be double, it could be integer, it could be long, it could be a string. But we want to declare the type that we're wanting to use so that the system will have enough space reserved and know what type it's going to be working with before it starts running. The compiler then will reserve ahead of time information for our process. So get your hands dirty in learning about declaring things. Go back in the video and stop on the chart of data types and learn about them. You'll also see in that chart a link to the Microsoft Development Network's information about data types. You need to become very familiar with data types, and you'll see the ones that we'll use the most frequently I've made in bold in that chart. And we'll start to develop our programs and add more to it as we progress through this series. And by knowing how to declare the data types, you'll understand, just like we make a reservation for a hotel or motel room where we need different number of beds and different size beds for our stay at the hotel or motel, so too we also do to the computer. We make a reservation with the dim keyword, with using our variable name that we're going to be using, and then telling it what size that's going to be, what type. Is it going to be a fractional number or a whole number, or is it something like a string, which is a special series of characters? We're going to declare that up front so the compiler knows what it's going to be working with. So you get your hands dirty, practice a little bit. Until next time, take care.